Okay, so this is assignment 16.2 and it's about the techniques used by a coach and how they can improve the performance of an athlete. So the first technique I'm going to talk about is just the demonstration, which is just the visual action of a performance shown by a coach in order to help the athletes improve their ability to learn it. So it just helps them to see what's actually supposed to happen. So for example, just like if in volleyball, for example, you'd show them the simple dig shot, or in football, you could show them, the correct way to, more simple, correct way to pass, or the correct way to header a football. Sometimes it's not so easy to do demonstration, like in swimming, for example, the coaches don't often get in the swimming pool unless they're teaching very young kids, but they don't often get in the swimming pool. They just stand on the side and they have to rely on their gestures that they use. So quite a good way to do this as a coach is to show. So, for example, if you're doing a header in football, for example, if you're doing the passing in football, you could show clearly a very, very bad pass. Like you can over-exaggerate a very bad pass, smash it as far away as the player as possible, and then show a very, very good pass. So you're over-exaggerating the movement, and it shows the clear differences between what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. So demonstration is a really effective way because it's very easy to understand. It does target visual learners quite well. Also, it's easy to correct mistakes. So if someone's clearly going wrong, you can demonstrate and show them exactly what they should be doing and why they're doing it wrong, rather than just saying, "Oh, you're doing that wrong. Try and move your foot this way." You actually have to show them and talk and walk them through it. It shows exactly how it should be looking. It shows the athletes like a mental image of what should be done. It can convey like the complex parts of a movement quite easily rather than trying to talk through them. And so if the criteria is met of an effective demonstration, then it's going to make it a lot better. So, the correct technique, if it's repeated, if all the athletes can see, because if, a few of them can't see, then they don't know what they're doing. If you could, as a coach, you could ask the athletes questions, show me the second stage of this movement. So if you break it down, it'd be like 3 stages of the movement, and you could ask them questions or get them to ask you questions if they don't know. Limit the coaching points as well. So like I just said, you could split it into 2 or 3 little points, so it's not too complex, especially for like young people. And then finally, you could put it in a game situation. So put it in context. So then they know, because otherwise they're going to forget the specific points of it. So it's very effective, but it's also got some drawbacks. So it depends very much on the coach's confidence of the technique. So if the coach isn't confident, if the coach doesn't know what they're doing, then the technique's going to be wrong, really, isn't it? You can't just demonstrate. It does need to be combined with verbal points. You can't just show them the movement and then tell them to go and do it. You do need to talk through it. And obviously if the criteria isn't met, so if the poor visibility or it's not repeated, then the athletes are going to struggle. So it's just, I feel, still a much better way of teaching than just instruction alone, because instruction alone, there's not that visual element to it. So elite athletes, they might not need as much of a demonstration because of their skill set. So obviously if you're coaching a footballer, they're not really going to need you to demonstrate a lot of the skills because you have that skill set. You specify your skills in that area. Whereas like a novice who potentially lacks a lot of skill in specific areas, they're going to need more of an effective, demonstration. Obviously, demonstrations they happen more frequently in training. So there's loads of time in training to do all the demonstrations, walk everything through. Whereas in a match, there's not really time. You can't, if you're playing in a football game, you can't pause the game and go and just demonstrate how to head the ball properly. You need to make sure it's all done in training so it's all effective in the game, all the demonstrations. Okay, so the second technique is observational analysis. So this is just video or live analysis, so someone watching, which is used, mainly for feedback, and so just video analysis of a performance, really. So it gives evidence of an evaluation of a performance before setting any goals or tactics or programs. So this technique really fits in very well with goal setting, which is another technique I'm going to talk about in a minute. because it really focuses on the weaknesses and tries to improve those, so you can set goals towards those weaknesses. So, for example, sporting example, so football. So if you're analysing someone playing football, you're going to see potentially how many passes they've made, whether they're like how many successful ones, how many non-successful ones. If they're a defender, you can think about how many successful tackles, or a striker, you can think about how many shots on goal they had, or how many they scored, and how many went off target and whatnot. A very effective way to coach, because so you analyse the performance, and if you do this, you do it once, and then you can repeat it after a time period, and then it helps to track improvement. So say you do it and you have 5 out of 10 shots were actually on target. If you then are practicing your shooting and then you repeat this analysis, and then for example you get 9 out of 10 shots on target, so it just helps to track the improvement. It's very good because it shows the clear strengths and weaknesses, the positive and negatives in the performance of an athlete. The video analysis is actually more effective, I think, than live analysis, because, for example, if you've got a team, you're going to need, so a team of footballers, that's 11 players on a pitch, you're going to need 11 people watching each player, or you can try and do it all as one, but that's not really going to happen. So I feel like video analysis is a much more effective way of doing it, because you video the whole game and then you go back afterwards and look at each specific player. It's objective, so it's not biased. It's based on the facts. You made 5 successful passes. That's that really. However, it's not effective because sometimes objective is objective, and sometimes this just doesn't tell us why. It tells us what. It tells us what you made this many passes, you made this many tackles, but it doesn't tell us why. So it doesn't put it into context. So for example, in football, you missed that shot at the end. You were, very close. You were 10 yards away from goal. How did you miss that? But they don't put it into context. There's no, well, I was under pressure. I was just about to be tackled. I got shoved off the ball, so my shot went wide. It just doesn't explain why. And also, some software can be expensive if you're doing it in a video analysis. So elite athletes may benefit more from this because, they're striving to focus on their weaknesses, they're striving to succeed, and they do this by improving on their weaknesses. Whereas I feel like some novices don't like their weaknesses being pointed out, so they just want to, if they're really good at shooting, they just want to shoot all the time because they know they're good at it. Whereas they don't want to work on, getting back and tackling and whatnot. Also, it's hard, as I've already explained, it's harder for a team because of the fact that there's more players, rather than just if you're, watching a tennis player. Obviously, it's a lot easier because there's just one person that you need to focus on, and that one person's skills. Technique is goal or target setting. So it just helps to increase an individual's commitment towards achieving maybe personal goals. It helps to keep them motivated and keeping wanting to achieve in these goals. So it's quite effective because it's effective if the targets are SMART, so specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So, specific to the player, measurable, they have to be able to measure it somehow. Achievable, so if they're unachievable, the player's obviously not going to be motivated to want to achieve them because they can't. They have to be realistic, so they can't be, win the World Cup next year if you're a grassroots team. And obviously time-bound, so it can't be too timely. Confidence and persistence is very important. So they've got to be confident in themselves to achieve, they've got to know within themselves they can achieve the goals. If they're like, oh no, I'm never going to do this, then they're not going to be motivated to do it. And also persistence, you've got to keep at it. You can't just fall at the final hurdle and then not get up and go again. So you've got to value effort. So you've got to make sure you're putting the effort in. You're not going to achieve a goal if you're not putting in the effort, especially with the coach as well. The coach has got to be putting in effort as well. They can't just leave the player to achieve their targets themselves. They play a big role in it. And also improvement, obviously, that's very important in achieving goals because you're wanting to improve. So process and outcome targets is just process versus outcome. Process more skill sort of stuff, whereas outcome is more let's win this, win that, focusing on the outcome, obviously. And it's very important that the targets are negotiated between the player and the coach. Whether they're short, medium, or long-term targets, they need to be negotiated so the coach and the player are on the same page. It's quite ineffective because obviously I've already stated about the goals being unachievable or potentially inappropriate or unrealistic. So, for example, if you're focusing on skills they don't actually require, so if you're doing a football session, you're not really going to be expecting centre-back to be focusing on their shooting, and you're not going to say, oh, you're a centre-back, your target for this season is to be the top goal scorer. That's not going to happen because they play centre-back. You're going to want to focus on the specific skills that they need. So centre-back maybe, if you're linking this with observational analysis, you could say, centre-back, I want you to be, at least getting 10 successful tackles a game or something like that. And the striker can be the top goal scorer. So they can't really be all outcome, because if the coach is all, win, 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 the players might not be motivated to do this because, there's no skill-based goals or there's no value for improvement almost. Because if you're just focusing on winning everything, you're not going to win everything if you're not focusing on the specific details that come in between. If the skill's imposed on the player, so this links into not being negotiated. So if it's all the coach is going, you're going to achieve this is your goal for this season, and the player's like, well, actually, I'm not really bothered about that. That's not relevant to me. That's not, like I said at the beginning, it's not going towards that personal goal that they want to achieve. It needs to be negotiated, really. And if they're too long-term, so if the target is way, way ahead in the future and there's nothing in between, the player's obviously never going to be motivated. So if they're like, yeah, we'll win the cup in 3 seasons' time, and that's the target, there's nothing in between there and then, the players aren't really going to be motivated to do it. So elite athletes, it's essential that they have targets because they're constantly needing to improve. Whereas novices, the targets just help them to keep enjoying the sport. If they say, so this session was good this week, next week at training, and then set some goals then, because it's like, I want to do that as a novice. Team targets obviously going to be different to individual targets. Individual targets are going to be more like I've already stated, like for example the centre-back getting more successful tackles, whereas team targets could be to win the cup or to win the next game and whatnot. Training is obviously going to be more process targets, so skill-based stuff, whereas in a game it's going to be more focused on the outcome, so winning the game or getting a point in the game. Although it could also be process, because it could be testing out a new formation or something like that. So it's not all based on the outcome.